Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Blackman. Phil, how's it going, man?
Bro, Triumph of Saint Catherine.
In the grim darkness of the future, there is only war. We're doing the 40K cards, our top 10, 13 really choices for the Warhammer 40K Commander set that is legal in Legacy. So let's get into it.
Bro, yeah, we're gonna go off this list. Triumph of Saint Catherine isn't until later, but like,
you're into it. As a precursor to this, Phil, have you ever played Warhammer 40K or even Warhammer or any Games Workshop games?
No, but I'm gonna play nothing but Warhammer now that Triumph of Saint Catherine exists.
So I have a deep lore knowledge of the 40K universe pre 2000. I played all through high school and stuff, as well as when playing Magic and stuff like that, because I worked in this comic shop that paid me to play all the games, bought all the stuff for me to play them. So we're diving into this with a little bit more knowledge than your average Vorthos would have for Magic the Gathering, I'd like to think.
Great, you're going to be filling us in on a lot of that stuff because I don't have any knowledge of it at all.
Indeed.
So I'm looking at this solely as it's just a new set with new mechanics and new cards.
Right on. So here we go. We're going to start with our three honorable mention cards. The first one being Redemptor Dreadnought. It's a 5-mana artifact creature that is an Astartes Dreadnought. Fallen Warrior. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may exile a card from your graveyard. Trample.
Creature card. Specifically a creature card from your graveyard.
A creature card from your graveyard, yes. And then it has Plasma Incinerator. Whenever Redemptor Dreadnought attacks, if the exiled card attacks, if a card is exiled with it, it gets +X/+X, where X is the power of the creature it exiled. Sorry.
Yes, it's a 5-mana trampler that can become a fatter 5-mana trampler.
Yeah. So of course, it has the word Dreadnought in it. I mean, we have to talk about Phyrexian Dreadnought with this card, right?
You know, I mean, it's a fat guy that's gonna make, it's gonna get fatter, and maybe use its fat to mess your opponent up.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So a quick lore drop in this, because we've talked about what it's useful for. We know that it is useful for literally one thing. At 5 mana, probably not playable, but still worth talking about. In the Warhammer universe, the Dreadnought is a mech that basically they put a dying or almost dead Space Marine into, and then that Space Marine powers the Dreadnought with the remainder of its life force. Neat.
Dark.
Yeah. I mean, it is the grim dark. All right. The next card we have is one of the greater demons. It is the Lord of Change, a 7 mana that's 6 and 1 blue demon. It has flying and ward 3, and it says when it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. It is a 6/6. That's about it. This card would probably be maybe playable if Grizzlebrand didn't exist.
Wow, flying ward 3 when it ETBs Ancestral, and it's just not even close.
No, and the word 3 is the reason why this would be playable, as a replacement for Grizzlebrand, because okay, now you can't get my guy and I can start swinging in.
2 mana 8/8s in the format, Grizzlebrand in the format. Sorry, Lord of Change.
Exactly.
Your name is not conducive to reality.
Yeah. All right. The Golden Throne. Enter all the toilet humor you like right here in the comment section below. Wow. Also, you know what? Like and subscribe while you're at it. For toilet humor, guys. The Golden Throne is a 4-mana legendary artifact. It has arcane life support. If you would lose the game, instead exile the Golden Throne, and your life total becomes 1, and it says 1,000 souls die every day. Tap, sacrifice a creature, and add 3 mana of any combination of colors. We're talking about the top half of this card, not the bottom half of this card. Obviously.
What do you mean we're not talking? Tap, sack a creature?
You're into that. You're into that part for 4 mana?
No, bro. I'm into the thing that a card that sits on the table and says you can't die yet. Don't die yet.
Yep.
Think about dying. Get close to dying, but don't die.
Again, this is the final of the honorable mention cards. This is just an interesting card with ad nauseam or decks that want to do that.
I think this card is actually the get 4 mana sack a creature Black Lotus. It's just 4 mana sack. It's sack a creature Black Lotus, right?
Yep.
I'm that seems real good, man.
Okay. It's tap it though. It's not just like,
Bro,
you don't
is this
just
gonna
get to...
show up? Is this gonna show up in Legacy? No, but like tap, sack, Black Lotus, like that's just I'm interested in all those words.
He likes those words.
Those words, let it be known. Sacrifice a creature to Black Lotus, or it's better than Black Lotus. It's any combination of colors. That is
any combo.
powerful shit.
You could play an
Powerful
Esper
shit.
creature off of this. You could play a Naya creature off of this afterwards.
We are never seeing this in Legacy unless it's part of some busted combo that we haven't thought of yet because it's, you know, convoluted. But
speaking of things we haven't thought of yet, this is the opposite, is things we have thought of. Ghyrson Starn, Kelermorph, is a 3/2 Tyrannid human for 1, a blue, and a red. It's a legendary creature with Ward 2, and it has 3 auto stubs. Whenever another source deals exactly 1 damage to a permanent or player, the named card deals 2 damage to that player. So basically, you're getting 3 for your grape shots,
or your needle drops,
or your empty the warrens tokens,
or your fork bolt.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cards that work really well in this color combination with this card, including Lobber Crew, guys. You could build a whole like Tim deck.
You could just go lob some crew.
Yeah, dude. And Lobber Crew.
We had a long conversation about this.
Multicolored cards on taps. Actually, you could really get there with that.
I remember we had a long conversation about this card over our text thread, and I was like, "Wow, I think that there may be something here because Ward 2." I was like, a card like this sucks, but the fact that it has Ward 2, I was like, "Oh, okay, so it actually can protect itself." All the removal spells attacking Ward 2, like that's a meaningful text. Ward 2 is meaningful text, particularly if you're trying to pair this with other things. So like combo kill with Grape Shot, where every single instance of Grape Shot deals 3 instead of 1. So like your storm count is greatly reduced. Also, you can break up that. So
you can storm count of 7 if this is on the board, and it's over.
And if you cast this, it's like it has Ward 2, so theoretically being able to untap with it is fairly strong. Or they're committing their entire turn to removing it, which means that you're not losing tempo per se, right? Because if you have a 3-mana creature and they have to spend 3 mana to remove it, okay, well then
this reads draw a card and untap your lands, then, right?
They haven't gained anything on you, right? Yeah, exactly. You just pass the turn back and forth, and we simplified the board. But the more and more we talked about it, the more, and this is where, you know, Nate's influence still on the cast. I was like, guys, I think there's something here. I think like it's a blue-red card that is, it's already asking you to play cards that you'd want to play, and the only real concession for the most part, if you're building the deck, would be something like Grape Shot. But Grape Shot's also a banger against certain archetypes, so it's not like it's totally bad. It's not the best. It's not like you're looking to main board it, but like it's not an embarrassing card to have in your main board, because if you play against something where Grape Shot has text on it.
You can Burning Wish for Grape Shot. Like you can
do all that stuff on the
you know?
So I was like, okay. I was like, you know, it's like if you're in a place where you're like, okay, yeah, I'll play, you know, Fire Ice or Forked Bolt. It's like these are playable incidental cards that, you know, are better against the matchups where they're better, right? Yeah. Like if you play against elves, Forked Bolt is better than Bolt. So it's like there's range, right? So I was like, it's interesting. There's an interesting conversation to be had. And then Nate was like, yo, you know, the problem with this card is that it's not doing anything for you. It's making cards that are in your deck better, but by itself, it's not doing anything else. And
it's attacking for 3.
And I was like, you know, looking at it through the lens of what is it doing other than making the other good cards better? You know, but like it's not doing anything that the good cards.
Here's what it's doing: it's taking an archetype that was expensive and it's making it cheaper. Like you can build from a deck with blue and red and much cheaper than you can do like a traditional like Adnaz Storm deck.
Yeah, LED, yeah. But like from a competitive standpoint, if you think about something like, well, Young Pyromancer also does something similar. The thing is that it's Young Pyromancer or something along those lines changes the axis, right? Like Mentor changes the axis. It's turning those cards into another form of threat that your opponent needs to deal with. So whereas this guy is only making your burn spells better burn spells, it's not fighting along a different axis, so it's not actually changing what your opponent needs to deal with. If they stop the burn spell, then this guy also doesn't do anything, as opposing to if they stop the spell off a Young PZ, you still get the token, right? And looking at it through that axis, I was like, okay, yeah, I think Nate is right here. I think it's too much of a stretch beyond what you just suggested.
Yeah, I think my final take on this card is maybe we need to have Storm Liaison Bryant Cook on to talk about this card.
I mean, if he has to turn over he's already turned over his what's Infernal Tutors. So maybe one day he'll be like, yep, LED's just not playable.
This
Gotta
is
get
the
rid
way
of
to
LED.
do it. Yep. All right. Next card is
get my needle drops.
Next card is Malanthrope. This is a 2/2 flying Tyrannid for 1, a green and a blue, and it says Scavenge the Dead. When it enters the battlefield, exile target player's library and put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Wow, library. Exile their library.
Sorry, graveyard.
Exile their library. Graveyard. It's busted. Yeah, exile the
target
graveyard.
Player's graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature card exiled this way.
Wow,
so
endurance exists.
Yeah, endurance exists, of course. I think were it not for endurance, this is an interesting card to be like, okay, well, I'll green suns for this and like remove your graveyard.
Bro, what a world we would be in if Modern Horizons 2 just never happened. How interesting would it be?
Right, but this has flying, so I want to just put that out there.
It does have flying, and it also loses to Power Blast. So cool.
Yeah, extra good. All right, let's talk about Pox Walkers. Pox Walkers is one of 2 cards from this set that I think
this is
really going to push the dredge deck forward a little bit. Pox Walkers is a 2 and a black for a creature zombie. It's got Death Touch. It's a 3/1. It says Curse of the Walking Pox. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, return Pox Walkers from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped.
So I don't think that this is going yeah, cool, dredge, fine, awesome. This is another card that works off of Gravecrawler. And so this in my mind, this is just an additional Gravecrawler.
So you're going full Zombardment with this guy.
I'm thinking if you are in like every Zombardment is just a Gravecrawler enabler deck, right? Like the card that actually makes those decks work is Gravecrawler. So
and the cool thing is this enables Gravecrawler. So what you do is you get this out in Gravecrawler, you sacrifice Gravecrawler, then you recast Gravecrawler, right, from your yard, and then you sacrifice this, and then the Gravecrawler hits the board, and this comes back.
If you have the sack trigger on the stack, you would if you would sack the Gravecrawler, or you would sack the Gravecrawler, cast it with Poxwalkers. Poxwalkers needs to see the cast from the graveyard, right?
Oh yeah. It's not when it enters the battlefield. Yeah.
The difference though is that this is unlike Prized Amalgam, where Prized Amalgam is a triggered ability at the end of turn, so you only get it once.
Yeah, you just keep doing this.
You can
if you have 2, you're very likely to have like an extra Poxwalker in your yard. So once you have like a couple, they're just coming out for free.
That's what I'm saying. Like because you can recur them any number of times in the turn. That if you can recur your Gravecrawler over and over and over, like if you have that engine, right, and just you need something else to do with it, this is just another body that whatever you're recurring off the sack outlet. So like let's say you have your Gravecrawler and Phyrexian Altar, and that is online, and you're just casting Gravecrawler infinite times. This on
then you've won, right?
Well, then now you're making infinite mana, right? Now you couldn't do that before. Because Gravecrawler costs mana. This costs no mana. So it's just opening up. It's like for those types of decks. None of those decks are not going to ever be tier legacy like competition, like competitive.
This is the stuff that Nate plays on when he doesn't have any time.
But like it's the cool fun stuff that like this is an enabler for a deck that has once existed and been good before. It will never be good again unless something, and this isn't going to get it there. But it's uniquely helping another deck. The same way that when we were talking about the new Ajani with Infect potentially helping Infect specifically, this would help that deck specifically. So I think like the fact that I can clearly see where a home for this would be, and recurring Death Touch is no joke. That I like this card a lot.
All right, let's talk about the Triumph of St. Catherine.
Oh my God!
Why don't you talk about it? Why don't you talk about it?
Okay, so I posted on Twitter. I was like, "Yo, this card is insane. It's so good. It's right in the lane of what a classic Miracles build has wanted for a long time, which is a way to stabilize life total and a way to compress your curve. Because and the way that you could do that before for life gain is you could move into green, right? So you had Oko, you had Uro, but the way that those decks play out is they play out much more mid-rangey. They're much more the way that the games play is you are playing a mid-range deck that has control cards in it, but you're not actually playing like your play patterns are not control patterns, right? It's like, let's exchange resources and then I'll just bludgeon you with a design mistake.
Yes.
Whereas St. Katherine, St. Katherine does things very unique for miracles that it wants. It removes the need to go into double white, right? Entreat requires double white.
Yeah.
But you don't really ever want more than one planes, unless you're specifically on like a Supreme Verdict build, which, you know, okay, cool. But the fact that you don't have to go into double white, it's also a 2-drop, right? So if you miracle it, it's 1 and a white. So imagine, instead of having to hit all of your land drops for entreat and then entreat at like 6 mana, imagine if your miracles list just got to stay at 4 mana the whole game. And you never had, and you could put cards, you could put lands back.
Yeah, you could throw them back.
You just don't need them anymore. So if you can compress your curve and
you've increased your selection as well, which is good.
And it having, because it's at 1 and a white, it also means that it can come earlier, right? If you draw an entreat on turn 3 with 2 mana on the board because you haven't played your 3rd land drop yet, that's just a dead draw until you put it back on top, right? Like that is the
card you don't want.
That is the inherent like that is the compromise that you make for having a miracle in your deck, right? Like it's very powerful late and it's very bad early. This is going to be very good early. And the difference though is that the floor is a 5 mana 5/5 lifelinker, which means that
with this other ability, we haven't even said what the card does.
We haven't even said what the other. So it's a 5/5 lifelinker. We'll talk about the other ability in a second, but it has miracle for 1 and a white. So let's say we've gotten to the point where we've exchanged a bunch of white cards. We're going back and forth, and the limiting factor for me as the miracles player is I need to stabilize my life total, right?
Always.
My floor being a 5/5 for 5 that only cost me 1 white, right? So I'm not compelled to have to extend past 1 white mana source. It's 4 and a white for a 5/5 lifelinker, which means that if you attack and I'm not dead and I get to swing back, I'm potentially blanking the majority of your combat step.
Yep.
That buys me turns. Like that is versus like if you think 5 mana for an entreat would give me 1/4/4 flyer.
Can I bring up something as well? Like you can miracle this thing into an attack.
You could instant speed miracle this.
Yeah, like if your opponent is like, I'm going to attack with my Ragavan, which we don't do in Legacy anymore, but like, you know, whatever. They're Nimble Mongoose to pick up another card that doesn't get played. And you're like, okay, I'll miracle this and block it with my 5/5 lifelinker.
Amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's exactly like you've killed a creature, you stabilize your life total. 5 life is a lot of life.
And also, there are unique aspects to this that are in range of exactly the meta we're in. No Pyroblast, no Hydroblast. It's out of range. It's out of reasonable range for Prismatic Ending. It can't hit. It's not going to get touched by Karakas.
It one-shots most Planeswalkers.
It's going to it will one-shot most Planeswalkers unless it's been on the table for a while. But you can also potentially instant speed it. The only thing that this is soft to is Swords to Plowshares, and it's like, okay, yeah, Swords to Plowshares hits every creature in the format. Maybe this doesn't doesn't go up a card, right? Like it's not a value engine. But if it cost you 2 mana, this is doing the work that Stoneforge Mystic Batterskull is doing in 1 card. Now it's not going up a card, but now if I wanted to play Stoneforge Mystic, I don't have to take up more slots in my deck by playing the Stoneforge Mystic package plus a Batterskull.
Yeah,
it's saving me slots. It's doing a whole bunch of things that like classic blue-white X miracles that isn't green has not had ever. It is open. It will open up so many doors. I get that, like, it's going to open you up to other cards that, like, before miracles never really cared about. But like, you'll be able to deal with that. Here's the other aspect of how big of a deal St. Katherine is. If you're playing a card like Entreat, and I'm the biggest advocate for Entreat, right? That's literally my brand.
You're the guy.
You're the Entreat guy.
Yeah.
A requirement of Entreat in order to hit your land drops is you need to be able to have the game go long. So you're priced into playing cards that exchange resources, but then you're also priced into play cards like Predict or AK or other card advantage spells, because you, in order to trade those resources and to continue hitting land drops, you need to go up resources to do that. You can't just go blank and then like not have, you need to be able to exchange resources to not die, but then also continue to hit your land drops so that your entreats are actually relevant. With Triumph of St. Katherine, you can compress the curve where instead of now using your card advantage to have to hit your land drops, if you even need to play that kind of card advantage at all, right? If I'm playing a lower to the ground deck that has proactive threats, like one of the best things about Counterbalance is that you can cantrip proactively. Rather than having to be like, okay, I'm going to hold on to my brainstorm or my ponder to look for something to react to my opponent and what they just did. Now I go, oh, I'm going to ponder, look for my counterbalance and try and set that up. My cantrips get another angle where I can cantrip proactively for a threat, that threat being counterbalanced. Now St. Katherine lets me do the same. And it's a threat that will help me close the door quickly.
There's just nothing that you want to counter.
Let's say you're doing all that.
Let's say you're doing
all the things, right? Let's say you're doing all the things. Everybody's like, Phil, but like Source of Plowshares, bro, come on. If you're playing the Counterbalance Miracles deck, and now you've given yourself a whole bunch of open slots because you aren't compelled to do the idea that you can then fight over those cards. And also, if you miracled this out and then they sourced it and gave you 5 life, fucking cool, man. Great. Now you just got more life. You can do other things. Like the options. I'm so high on this card. Yeah. And I feel like I'm the only,
seems like
other people are like, oh, it's interesting. Maybe we'll try it. Maybe it's cool.
Phil needs 4 of them on day 1. You're from what I understand, you're bummed because this will not be legal during Legacy Pit, right?
Bro, like Legacy Pit is I'm going to be at the Legacy Pit Open. If on no testing at all, just on theory, I would have sleeved up 4 copies of this for Legacy Pit and been more confident I would have been more confident going into that tournament than I've been in the last 5 years.
Wow. We're
not going to get it until the week after Legacy Pit. I can't this card.
Well, let's move on.
This is so good.
We even talk about the Presidium Protectiva.
Yeah, you want to talk about the other ability?
Yeah, let's talk about the other ability.
Let's say you're playing against Urza Saga, right?
What does this other ability do, Phil?
Okay, so the other ability is that when it dies, you exile it with the top. You essentially shuffle it into the top 6 cards of your library back on top of your deck, so you can theoretically miracle it again. Yeah. So you're like, but Phil, you just said it. None of the removal hits it. The only removal that does hit it is Swords to Plowshares. And then if that's the case, then this thing won't trigger. Okay, yeah. Let's look at a world where Urza Saga is a huge fucking pain in the ass if you're not playing Wasteland, right? Your way to beat Urza Saga is Terminus, or going wider on an Entreat the Angels in the late game. But what if they have an early Urza Saga and now they just have a bunch of power? Now you're wasting a bunch of resources. The thing is that you have to use your Prismatic Ending on their Retrofitter Foundry that they just got instead of the threat. But then the threats are beating you down because they're both fucking 5/5s. You play this and it turns that shit off. Because if they want to go into combat with your 5/5 lifelinker that then shuffle back into the top of your deck and you're playing cantrips, guess what? Here's my fucking 5/5 again.
Yep. All right. Well, and with that said, we'll check out Keeper of Secrets. Keeper of Secrets is a 6 mana that's 5 in a red, first strike haste creature. That is a 6/4. It says whenever Symphony of Pain, whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Keeper of Secrets deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. Sorry.
What do you think?
I again think that this is this is a weird card because this is interesting text that we only ever saw on a uncommon draft, like a draft uncommon from what's it called? From Innistrad. If you cast something from another place, deal damage to your opponent. But this is interesting because first strike and haste on a 6/4.
Haste is the thing, right?
Haste
I think it's too expensive, but haste is meaningful.
Yeah, the cast from anywhere other than your hand is interesting, but I can't place it. I can't it's not like you're gonna play Past in Flames deck to make this work. You've already won if you're casting Past in Flames, right? You should have done something different than cast this. But I think it's interesting text that I think it's worth noting.
Yeah, the floor being a 6 mana 6/4 with haste, ain't it, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Unless this is part of a combo, we'll never see it.
All right, so let's go to Tox.
By the way, can we talk a little bit more about? I'm just kidding.
Toxicrene is a 4 mana Tyrannid with Reach and Death Touch. It's a 2/4, and it says Hyper Toxic Miasma. All lands have add 1 color of any mana, tap it, add 1 color of any mana, and lose all other abilities.
So I saw people getting pretty high on this. It's just like a green Sun Zenith target to shut off all of lands. Not the worst. It's also a 2/4 with Reach and Death Touch, so it's going to stop those 3/3s and 3/2s in the air. Not bad. Mm-hmm. There's enough here. I would expect this to show up. It's a nice, reasonable toolbox.
Yeah, it's you can green suns for this and stop. Assuming you have enough mana to stop the Dark Depths deck.
It's the same type of thing, right? It's a a toolboxy hate bear that has relevant abilities with relevant stats.
Yeah, and it blocks Delver, you know, like
yeah,
and it blocks it blocks Merit Lage. Worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, like, where I was
blocks
saying,
and
like,
kills Merit Lage. No, it doesn't kill it. It doesn't kill it.
It's going to be good against it's obviously good against the decks where the land clause has text.
Yes.
But then Reach and Death Touch means that it lines up against all of Delver because it stops the 3/3s and the 3/2s, but then Death Touch will trade with a Murktide.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
It's because all of that is relevant, even though 4 mana is a lot, because it's going to have agency over, like, it has a bunch of aspects across decks that don't particularly have anything in common, right? Like, the land ability is not going to affect Delver at all, but the Death Touch actually being relevant in the format, so you could main deck this as a one of in your Green Sun Zenith deck if you wanted to, if you're expecting, like, oh, there's going to be a lot of lands in Delver. Yeah, you'll see this.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Biotransference. That is a 4 mana, that's 2 and 2 black enchantment that says creatures you control are artifacts in addition to other creature types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So everything's every creature's an artifact. Everything, no matter where it is an artifact. And then it says whenever you cast an artifact spell, you lose a life and create a 2/2 black Necron Warrior artifact creature token.
I'm pretty sure that between Painter Servant and Mycosynth Lattice, that this type of ability, being able to turn all of your other stuff into something else as like a blanket effect, has proven extremely combo.
Yeah, there's just something about this card, you know, like the only thing that makes you not go infinite is like the lose one life, right?
There's a way to go infinite. I don't know what it is. I don't know if you know what it is. But 100% it exists.
Yeah. I don't know. I just love I love this card because it's a real cool nod to like the Necron takeover thing in the game. Just Necrons are sort of like these, they just like take death and like now you're a robot, right? Cool.
And this is in the fast mana color.
And exactly, like this is like boom, turn to this, and like every creature you have, you know, is now also this. Or like, dude, play it in a black artifact deck and like just go off, you know, like who knows? I don't have the exact reason why this is good. I just know that it's an interesting card, and I think that it's worth talking about because it's a very unique effect.
Also just like, whenever you cast an artifact spell, make a 2/2, and if you're already going to be in the fast mana deck where you're playing like, you know, literally everything out of 8 cast, like you're just spamming 2/2s. I get that it's costing life, but like a bunch of like just getting a fast you know, what's the land that makes 2/2 zombies? Field of the Dead. Getting a fast Field of the Dead off of this, off of the rest of your cards, and everything else becoming artifacts. Like, imagine if this was in blue, and your Emery could rebuy all like your Psy.
Yeah, I mean, I would play this in a second in what's it called Amazing in like 8 cast. Obviously it's not blue though. All right, next card, Vanguard Suppressor. This is a 3/2 for 4 mana. That's 3 and a blue. It has squad 2, so you can pay 2 to make like clones of it as many times you want. It has flying and it has suppressing fire. Whenever this deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now, I only put this in here because you were talking about something about High Tide with it. Tell me about that.
So, I mean, turns out when you have a bunch of mana and then something to sink it into, it's pretty cool. But this is like, I could see this as essentially filling the space of like the Empty the Warrens for High Tide.
Yeah,
because if you just have a bunch of mana and you just squad this, and then you have a bunch of 3/2 flying Ophidians, like, okay, sweet. You know, it's like, even if you have a small High Tide, like if you have a small High Tide and can pump out like 3 or 4 3/2 flying Ophidians, not bad, right?
Yeah, you
like
get there.
If you can't go off, but at least you have now a sizable board where every single one of them is a threat. Like if they connect, that's amazing.
Yeah,
right? So
certainly not the card that you would play 4 of in that deck, but like
it strikes me as like you know, if you're, it just gives it another access to, like, in blue now you have an Empty the Warrens type effect, and it's like, okay, and there's a bunch of those cards in this set that kind of do similar things.
Yeah, especially the squad, all the squad cards,
especially squad. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Old One Eye. It's a 6/6 legendary Tyrannid for 6 mana. That's 5 and a green. Has trample. Other creatures you control have trample. when Old One Eye comes into enters the battlefield, you create a 5/5 green Tyranid creature token. All that text is very interesting. You would think, oh, this is a Nick Fit card. Sure, Zach's going to talk about a Nick Fit card. It has fast healing. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may discard 2 cards. If you do, return Old One Eye from the graveyard to your hand. This is interesting in that it's like kind of another weird enabler like Phantasmagorian is for Dredge. And I think we're getting closer to a spot where like Dredge might want to pick up 1 or 2 of these cards to try and see if they can make their deck more efficient.
That's interesting. I can see that. You know, all right, yeah, okay.
Like Dredge still loses for all the same reasons it loses, but like having all these different options in your deck is interesting. And like this is another thing you can dread return if you can't get Grizzlebrand to play or whatever. 2/5, 6/6 and a 5/5 both with trample, it'll get there.
Yeah, okay. I'm convinced there. I'm convinced on that.
I think that's all we have for the Warhammer cards. It looks like a really fun commander set. I have to say, I ordered all of them just because I had to.
I mean, I'm gonna get paint is gonna go on the Triumph of St. Catherine so fast.
Oh yeah.
I will give a shout out to Sister Repentia. Is that how it's pronounced? The other
Sister
miracle
of the other miracle that's a 5/1.
There's a couple of miracles. We'll
put that up here.
There's another miracle that's Zephyrim. That's it's a 4-mana 3/3 with squad that's flying and vigilant that you can miracle for 1 and a white. So you miracle for 1 and a white, and then for every additional 2 that you pay, you get another 3/3 flying and vigilant.
Oh wow!
That to me feels like diet, and that feels like diet Entreat to me.
Yeah,
because one of the big deals about Entreat is that 4/4 is a relevant body, where 3/3 isn't as much, and also the rate of return on squad is worse than in a Miracle Entreat. So although Zephyrin looks hot, particularly because it only requires 1 white as opposed to 2 white, I do still think it's a diet Entreat, and you'd be better off just playing Entreat.
Yeah.
For Sister Repentia in Miracles, everybody was saying that they were a lot of people that I was talking to about how good Triumph of St. Catherine was convinced that Sister Repentia was better because it draws cards when it dies. 1, it has to die, so Source Supply shares to shut it off. 2, it miracles for black-white, which means that you're dipping into a third color.
It's a whole nother color. Yeah,
it's a whole nother thing that's opening you up to Wasteland. It's like there's no other reason for right now for miracles to be in black as the splash, unless you're looking at another weird tech that isn't Pyroblast. So I think Sister Repentia stretches you too far and doesn't actually give you all of the benefits of what Triumph of St. Catherine does in terms of what Miracles wants. So in order to stabilize your life title, 2 life is not 5. Drawing 2 cards is obviously good, but this being a 5/1 means that it's going to trade with everything, so it's not as reliable. And it's too many other hoops. I feel like it's too many other hoops, and it's not a reliable card advantage spell because it has to die, not get exiled.
Yeah.
So in the world where it does die, if it trades with something and you go up 2 life and go up 2 cards, amazing. But the fact that it's not doing anything for you to stabilize life, like if your opponent can ignore this, it's not going to race. Like if you have a Murktide and I have a Triumph of St. Catherine, I win the race.
True. Yeah.
Whereas this can't. So
as long as that Murktide isn't a 6/6, then that's a problem.
What's up?
As long as the Murktide isn't a 6/6.
Well, no, because if you attack me for 6, I effectively take 1 when I
10-point swing, of course.
Yeah.
But I feel like they wouldn't attack you then.
Right. But that said, but isn't that fucking so good?
Yeah.
But then they wouldn't attack me then. Isn't that so goddamn?
That's where you want to be. Before we, I want to finalize, like talk about a couple more things real fast. Before we do that, I wanted to bring up our sponsor, MoxField. MoxField is a really great deck building website, www.moxfield.com. You can check out our personal profiles with the decks that we have and some of the ideas we're brewing up and whatnot. Our budget decks are on there as well. It's a great place to build decks for Commander, for pre-modern, for Legacy, for Vintage, obviously for Standard and Modern too. So check out moxfield.com. The link's down below. You can also, if you're a fan of the show and you want to get in tune with what we're talking about doing on the daily, get into our Discord. The link's down below. Check it out. Jump in there. Everybody's pretty friendly in the Discord. That's a lot of fun. I'm on there pretty much all day, all the time. I'm very responsive. Phil's in there as well. And I don't know. I want to finalize this by saying I'm moving this week. So we're going to try and get another episode out on time. Thanks everybody for bearing with us as we've been like, we're just shuffling our lives around and stuff. So I don't know what Phil, what do you got to add to that?
Let us know if you want us to dedicate an entire episode dissecting how good Triumph of St. Catherine is. I think we can.
I think Phil wants you to want that.
I think it's a reasonable request, and yeah, I'm gonna.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, follow the podcast, retweet us. What have you. Do the things that help us grow. We're trying to grow. We're trying to be good. We're trying to give you the entertainment that you so severely deserve. But with that said, I think that's it.
We want to be the triumph of St. Catherine of podcasts.
Yes, we want to exactly the things you deserve and need. All right, well, everybody, have a good day, and we'll see you next week.
Deuces.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out this other video. You'll probably like it.